Hello viewers! Today it's hot and hotter. I'm going to be trying to make some delicious Korean rice wine, and I'm going to be trying something different. This is an experiment. I'm going to be doing a two-stage brew with juk and godubap. Now normally I let the juk cool to room temperature before adding the naruk, but today I'm going to do one jar with the juk cool to 45 degrees Celsius before adding the naruk, and another jar cool to 35 degrees Celsius before adding the naruk. So I want to see what the difference is when I start off at a higher temperature. How does this affect the brew? Now, if you like this video, please click that like button and subscribe. So let's start. Day 0, we're going to be making juk with this rice powder. 200 grams of rice powder, 900 milliliters of water. Same thing in each pot here. Stir on medium heat until it becomes thick. Quite a bit of stirring is required. This will take some time, but when it does thicken, this is going to take 10 minutes or more. When it does thicken, it'll be very sudden. Okay, so that's the juk. Same thing in each pot. So stir and check the temperature. So while we're waiting for that to cool down, let's mix up our naruk. So 90 grams of naruk, 200 milliliters of water, and a quarter teaspoon of wine yeast. And the same thing for jar B. So stir the juk often and check the temperature, because of course the center is going to be hotter than the exterior. So this is my first measurement, less than 45 degrees Celsius, so we're going to use this for jar A. It's always a pain getting the juk out of the pot. It's easier if the pot is big enough. You can mix in the naruk in the pot and sort of liquefy it before pouring it in the jar. That's a lot better. I didn't do such a good job this time, but with a bigger pot, it'll be easier. So I'm waiting for this to cool down to 35. Okay, finally we're below 35, so it's ready for jar B. Okay, get some of that in there and mix in the rest in the pot. Don't like wasting any rice. Okay, so this is starting off the fermentation, and we're starting off at a higher temperature than normal, higher than room temperature. Keep the lids loose as normal, and I'm fermenting in a dark place since I have glass jars. It's around 20 degrees Celsius. So after day 1, let's look at it. It's liquefied and it's bubbling, so it is fermenting. That's good. And jar A and jar B look about the same. They both have bubbles. I can hear them and see them. And I'm going to stir twice a day for the first 2 days. So this is just the first stage, but it's the stage where we made the change. Still looking the same. Okay, but it's fermenting, so that's good. Get some air in there, stir both of them again. So it's day 2, let's make some godubap today. So 1.6 kilograms, so 800 grams each. Wash that rice and drain, and then repeat about 9 times. Then soak that for at least 3 hours, and then drain it. Let it drain for half an hour. getting the steamer ready here. The water's hot. That's a wet cheesecloth, and I pour the drained rice on top. Wrap it up and steam for 40 minutes. Carefully lift it up, put it on a rack to dry, spread it out some more, and let that cool to room temperature. So for this stage, we are cooling to room temperature. After it's cooled, divide it up equally with a scale, and we're going to put equal amounts of godubap in each jar. And then I'm going to mix it by hand. And then mix jar B by hand. All right, so ready to continue fermentation. It'll go back in the cupboard. Okay, day 3. Keeping an eye on them. They look similar. Day 4, I am noticing an apple aroma. I've noticed that in other brews as well. So that's the fragrance I'm getting, even though, of course, I didn't add any apples, but that's the aroma I'm getting during the brew. So just keep on watching it. So I'm seeing more liquid at the bottom. It is very cloudy, though. Both of these brews look very dense and cloudy, even though there is liquid at the bottom. Ideally, the liquid would be more clear, yellowish liquid, but letting this go a few more days. It's already so it's been brewing for a few weeks. Okay, on day 19, let's bottle it. I boil my filter bag, stir jar A one last time, and put the filter bag on the top, pour it in. Okay, and it was pretty easy to squeeze these. So in terms of how it broke down, pretty good. 321 grams left over. So let's get those. Let's get jar A into bottles. And then we'll move on to jar B. Stir that one last time. And I've boiled the filter bag again. And dump that in and squeeze. And just about the same, 314 grams left over that she gave me. Okay, so let's get jar B into bottles. So there it is, higher starting temperature, hot, 35 degrees, hotter, 45 degrees. How is this going to affect the taste? So I'm going to taste it right now, just to see what it's like right after bottling. And both A and B have weak alcohol taste, not so strong. Very thick texture, sort of strange. And it's a sweet start, but a bitter aftertaste. So that's what I'm getting when I'm tasting it today, right after bottling. But I'm going to put this in the fridge, let it settle, and taste it in a few days, because it might change a little bit. And also, often things taste better after a few days in the fridge. So let's try it. Then. Okay, so now 6 days after bottling, let's do a taste test. Okay, so it's 6 days after bottling, and as you can see, it did not settle very well. Normally, by 6 days, the sediment should be down to about here. We'd have a lot of Iyangju. We don't have a lot of Iyangju at the top here. So, and it's the same for both A and B. But I do want to taste it now that it's been a few days after bottling, and I've poured off the top layer, the Iyangju, and then I mixed it, and I'm going to taste the Wanju as well. So this is the A Iyangju. Okay, so that's not bad. Pretty sweet, actually. It has a sweet aftertaste. Now, it doesn't taste super strong. It does have alcohol, but not as much as some of my other brews. This is the B Iyangju. Okay, also pretty clean. Fairly sweet. Maybe A was sweeter. Okay, that's interesting. Because there's sweetness, we can tell that enzymes did at least some of their work, converted the starch to sugar. And the fermentation did take place because we taste alcohol, but it's just, is this better or worse than the normal method of cooling all the way down to room temperature? That's what we're experimenting with today. So here I have the Wanju from A. It's a pretty thick texture, some bitterness. So I don't notice the sweetness. I notice the sweetness in the Iyangju, but I don't notice the sweetness in this so much. Yeah, so if I had to criticize this, I'd say it's the thickness that I don't really like, and the taste is a bit different too. It may be missing some of that milky taste that I'm used to. All right, so this is the B Wanju. Let's see what this is like. Pretty similar. The texture just seems a bit off. And there's more bitterness in the aftertaste. So just really side by side here. It is hard to tell them apart, but it is clear that this has a different taste than my normal recipe, where I let it cool down all the way. The defect seems to be in the texture and lack of milkiness, some milky flavor, and just the taste is just a bit off. and the texture for sure is off. So that's the summary of this experiment. That's why you want to cool down the rice all the way to room temperature before adding the Narucan yeast. Even though it fermented and enzyme worked, it's a bit off. The texture is off and the taste is off. So I guess that explains it. I hope you enjoyed this experiment. Thank you for watching.